Hi, this is Amit from Beatfactory, and today I'm going to show you a very simple technique to make your snare sound pop out a little more. And this is especially useful if you're using acoustic sounding snare and relatively weaker sounding snare, but you have a lot of synthesizers or electric guitar sounds, which can be pretty heavy in a sense that they can take a lot of space in the frequency spectrum and therefore compromise the snare sound uh, to a degree, and you might not like that. You might want to make your snare pop out a little more. So we're going to look at how to do that without actually using any EQ. So this is the track that I have. Let's check it out and then we'll talk more. So as you can hear that it's pretty it's pretty basic. It has your bass and piano sound, and but electric guitar is the sound which is probably the most prominent right now. And electric guitar has a lot of low mid frequency stuff, and snare also has a pretty important low mid transient. So you want to make sure that without compromising on the timbre of these sounds. See, you don't want to EQ this guitar sound in low mids, and you don't want to reduce the low mids of the guitar sound, because that will change the characteristic of how electric guitars sound. And that's, in this case, I wouldn't really do that, because that low mid area is actually really important to the guitar sound. So I want to retain that, but at the same time, when the snare hits, I want to make the snare hit a little more prominent, and I don't want the guitars to eat up a lot of that low mid space, so that the snare has a little more space to breathe, and so that it sounds a little more prominent. The snare sounds a little more prominent. And to do that, we are simply going to go to the electric guitar track. And this is grouped, by the way. There are 2-3 layers of guitars happening here, but I've grouped them and bounced them as one track. And I will I'll use a compressor here. So this could be any compressor. I'm using Logic's, but you feel free to use any compressor that you like to do, as long as it allows you to put a sidechain input. And that's the next thing we are going to do. We are going to select the snare audio 5 as the sidechain input. What that does is, when snare signal goes above the threshold of this compressor, the compression is applied on the guitar sound. So snare goes up and the guitar sound goes down, just for that very movement when the snare hit is present. So I'm gonna just increase the ratio a little bit. You can experiment with different compressors here. I'm just going with default settings that I have. And so right now I haven't given it any post compression gain, and this is how it sounds. So there you go. This is how you can do sidechain compression on electric guitars. We can also use the same settings on other music which might be clashing with snare. Again, this is just an example. I'm not actually going to do this exact stuff in the final mix, but it's just an example, basically, just to give you an idea of how you can do the sidechain ducking to clean up your mixes a little more. So I've applied the same compressor on this music, which basically has a bass and a piano. Uh, and now when we play the track, the snare uh, signal, because it's sidechain input for both these compressors, for electric guitar and on the music track, it's going to duck. Sidechain compression is going to happen on both electric guitars and music, and that's going to result in a more clear snare sound. And this is how it is. So you can see that when we are engaging these sidechain compressors, the snare has become a little more prominent, and but at the same time we are not actually cutting any frequency. We are just reducing the electric guitar and some other music tracks by a few dBs by doing the sidechain compression when the snare hit is present. Rest of the times it sounds like how it is, but we are just ducking it. It's kind of like automation. In fact, you can do this same thing with automation as well, but that's going to be very tedious and time consuming. So I suggest you try this out on your mixes. And this example is about the snare and electric guitar and stuff, but the same technique is applicable in so many ways. You can use this on vocals and guitars, and you can use this on snares and synthesizers, and snares and bass also, if your bass has a lot of low mid stuff happening, mid frequencies, which are also prominent in your snare sound. So the same technique can be applied in many different ways on many different types of instruments, but the basic concept remains the same, that you can use sidechain compression to clean up your mixes if you don't want to do any EQ, and you don't want to compromise on the timbre of a particular sound, so you can use the sidechain compression in that case. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk again.